Yeah. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Nun Gimel. Okay.
Do you want to double or have to carry it?
No. Okay, just regular. It's fine. Thank you.
You want to go your travels?
Thank you. I'll see you. All right. Today is Daf Nun Gimel. So we left off Nun Beis and Beis at the bottom line. So Nafal Afanaf. So we had a quote from the Mishnah yesterday. If an animal falls, someone was digging in a pit. If it falls forward, chayiv. If it falls backwards, pater. So there's a lot of confusion. So Amar Rav. So says Rav, what's going on in this case? So lefanav mamash, acharav mamash. When it falls forward, it means that literally it fell face first down, and when it fell backwards, it fell into the pit backwards and pater such a case. Why is this according to Rav? And both these are referring to, let's say, a board and Shusa Rabbin. And Rav Latame, Rav goes to Shitasa Dama Rav. Bor Shachayv Olav Torah, Lahavela Below Lachavato. As we saw earlier, when Rav says one is chayiv for not the damage that is caused by the ground. The caused by the ground, a pit in the Shusa Rabbin is not owned by the person who dug it. Right? So it's not his ground that causes the damage. So what's the damage? The damage is Hevel, right? The foul owners, right? So from that damage, so now when it falls forward, face first, there's hevel, and therefore that there one is chayiv. When it's backward, there is no hevel, therefore you're pater. Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, "Babor ben lefanav ben melacharav." Really, the person, the animal falls. Thank you. Whether forwards or backwards, and it's with the contact of the ground, and that's what's causing the chayiv. And Shmuel Tami Domar the Havela, that according to Shmuel, is the foul odors, and certainly any damage caused from the impact of the ground. So what's the case where the Mishnah says lacharav then is chayiv mikol achriya the pater? Excuse me, that it falls backwards that he's pater, and not these cases where he's chayiv where it makes an impact with the ground. Habor chus labor. In other words, when it trips over backwards. Right, it doesn't fall into the pit; it falls next to the pit, and therefore, since it's not falling in the pit, therefore there is no impact from the pit, and therefore it was just basically sort of startled by the person making noise digging, and it falls backwards. It trips over the pit and falls on top of the pit, not on the bottom, and therefore that's the reason why the Baal Habor is pater. When the pit is there, right? So that for sure. But our Mishnah started by the case that one was digging, right? So the case in the Mishnah, if you just look back at the Mishnah, the case says nafal l'saychlo, right? Nafal l'fanav mikol hachriya chayiv le'acharav mikol hachriya pater. So if one falls in front of us, there's one person digging, and not necessarily the person who owned the pit. It was some other person, but nevertheless, the baal of the bor is chayiv. Why is that? So one holds he created the hevel, that's Rav, and according to Shmuel, he created the impact. So therefore, what's the case? He's pater, he falls back pater. So it must be a case where he falls next to the pit and not that. But in terms of without the person digging cause the animals, certainly it would be on the Baal Habor in that case.
Oh man, wow. This process got to last 10 days?
No less. Back next Tuesday. All right. It says babor, so we have a kasha. It says babor bein lefanav bein lacharav chayiv. So whether front or backwards chayiv. So tiyufta the Rav, the kasha and Rav, because Rav says it falls at lacharav is pater because there is no hevel lacharav. So Rav Chizda ma'id Rav babor b'shuso the chayiv. Rav says no. If the pit was in the guy's rishus, then it's chayiv. Why? Mishum damar leimi malav shach. Because I can say the guy owner of the animal can say the owner of the pit says malav shach. If my animal died from the havel didchahu, then the havel is from your cause from you. And be bechavata, if it's from impact, so meis chavata didachu, right? Didchahu. You own this the pit, therefore it's your ground that it hit, and therefore it's not it's just a Rabbin ground that's pater. It's your own private ground that caused the damage, and therefore you're chai. And Rabba Marhaka Skinan b'mis hapech the nafal ape, right? In other words, where it flipped over, in other words, it fell towards his face. This hapech v'nafal. Agave, right? And then it fell backwards. So in other words, first it was face first. So therefore the hevel caused damage initially, and therefore it added to the damage from the impact, and therefore, but really, since it added hevel, he would be chayiv according to Rabbah. Right. With that, you're saying with the hevel. The hevel. Well, Yeah, it's falling over, but initially, I guess it was, V'navel Agave, the Havel, the Hani Bay, and therefore, since the Havel helped out, therefore the Havel, he caused the Havel, therefore the owner of the pit would be Chayiv for the Havel. Rav Yosef Amar, Hacha, Beniske, Bor, Shorskin. Actually, we're only talking about the Nezek of the Beniske, Bor, Shorskin. We're not talking about this, mind you. Shehivis Es Meimav. We're talking about the damage that actually the shore causes to the bore. What is that? He runs the waters. The that doesn't make a difference whether he fell forward or backwards, since he fouled up the waters there. Therefore, the Baal HaShor, that which is Chayiv, some of the Baal HaShor is Chayiv to go ahead and pay the Baal HaBor. So Tani Ravchan, let's see the Rav. So Ravchan, Nanya brought a proof of Rav. It says V'nafal Achipo Derech Nafila. It says V'nafal falls until Derech Nafila, which is face forward. Why face forward? Because that's the Hevel. So Mikana V'nafal Lefanav Mikola Kriya Chayiv Le'achara, but backwards Mikola Akriya Pater. Zev Bor. And each one of these is, in other words, a bor b'shus harabim. And therefore, front way is Chayiv because it created Hevel, and backwards is Pater. So therefore, it's a price in support of Rav. Now. Why does he say, you know what? The sound, the noise of the okay, so he say that the noise of the digging was what startled the animal and caused the damage. Why is it on the owner of the pit, who's not the digger? Should be mainly on the digger. So, whose opinion says this is Rabbi Nasani? This is Rabbi Nasani. We're going to see today. Damar Baal Habor, the owner of the pit, he caused damage. And whatever cannot be collected from one party can be collected from the other party. In other words, whatever that the Baal HaShor cannot go ahead and collect from the digger, he'll be able to go ahead and collect the remaining part from the Baal HaBor. And where do you see that? From the Tanya, in the Bryce, Shor Shedachav es Chaver Labor. So you have an ox belonging to A that pushes the ox belonging to B into a pit that belongs to C, right? So A and C really cause damage to B. Now, who's going to go ahead and pay? So Shor Shedachav es Chaver Labor. Baal HaShor Chayiv, Baal HaBor Pater. The owner of the animal is Chayiv, and the owner of the pit is Pater. Rabbi Nassan Nightmare. Baal HaShor Mishalim. Really, the owner of the ox should pay. Mechza. Baal HaBor Mishalim Mechza. And the other guy pays half. Now, since they were, they each were involved in the damage to the animal, so the owner of the ox that gored and the owner of the pit should each pay half. We have another price that says the owner of the pit pays 3/4 and the other one pays 1/4. What is going on here? So loy kash. So ha b'tam ha b'muat. So now we're going to have to remember two things. Going to have a couple of different terutzim. So it's like this. Now remember, tam chatzi nezek, right? First time offense, chatzi nezek, abnormal. Muad, already done a bunch of times. Nezek shalim. Now there's going to be Rabbanan and Rab Nasa. Rabbanan are going to say each person pays what they're responsible for. And Rab Nasa is going to pay. They're in it together. Each one is responsible for what they're supposed to. And if you can't go ahead and pay what you're responsible for, right, your partner in that part, he will go ahead and pay the rest of it. So let's see. Habatam habamuad. Batam Mike Saver. I understand about the case of the time. Mike Saver. Ik Saver Hai Kule Hazeka Ovid Vahai Kule Hazeka Ovid. Okay, now let's say it's a tam. So each one did half. So each one of us did half. Well, now. So high Mishalim Palga, high Mishalim Palga. So excuse me. If you hold that each one did full damage, so how much is half of full damage? Half. So each one should go ahead and pay. So one guy, the Baal HaBor, pays his half, and the other one, since he did entire damage, right? So in other words, he really is chayiv all of it, but he only pays up to half because he's responsible because he does that part. And the other one. So he's responsible for full damage. He's a tam. He pays chatzi nezek. She's by half. High palga zek of it. Be a high palga zek of it. But if you hold that each one did half the damage, then Baal HaShor Mishalim Palga, the owner of the pit, should go pay half his damage, which is chatzi nezek. Or Baal HaShor, but the owner of the animal was a tam. Ravi, he should only pay 1/4. In other words, he should pay half of a half, which is 1/4. Right? The idach Ravi mafsid, and therefore the owner of the victim, right, the owner of the animal that died. he should lose out on a quarter. So Rava says, no, Reb Nassan Dainahu, right? Reb Nassan, he was a Dainahu, and he went down, in other words, he was a judge, and therefore he's able to go ahead and dimin mamanos and go down to the Ikra Din. Really, each one is really responsible for the full amount of it. With the Kokasha, the Shalim, high palga, and each one should go ahead and pay half. Why? Mishum Damarle, Balashur, Balabur, because the owner of the animal that Gore can say the owner of the pit, should by a honeyly, right? What good, right, is your partnership with me in the damage? In other words, even without you, I only would pay the Chatzin Ezek. So why would I pay Chatzin Ezek with you? Right? It must be that I should really, my partnership with you should only require me to pay half of the Nezek, and even half, but that, since I'm a time, I should only pay half of it, therefore it's a quarter. And the other one, well, so since he was responsible, according to Reb Nassan, he was responsible for the entire amount, and the other guy is already paying a quarter, he pays the remainder amount, which is 3/4. Or each one really did half the damage. Therefore, this one pays half, this one pays half. The one of the pit should go ahead and pay half, but the other one should only pay a quarter. But according to that, if each one did half, so one guy pays the full half, and the other guy only pays half of the half, which is a quarter. Then the owner of the animal, the victim, should really lose out on a quarter. Because the victim can say to the owner of the pit, "Ana Torah the dircha achshchise as kasle."
By definition, the guy when you the animal damage pays that, and that's like obviously the owner of the animal is gonna lose out half the session. Not lucky, only pays that. So
right,
to expect to get will not.
So he should get exempt, but now he's coming to the owner of the pit. He's saying, I found my dead animal in your pit. You're responsible. It's in your pit. Whatever I can get from him, I didn't finish the line, right? My deisli mehi mehech mishamina. In other words, whatever I can go ahead and collect from him, I'll go ahead and collect. However, whatever I do not go ahead and collect from him, I will go ahead and collect from you. So therefore, argues this sheet according to this Iboy according to Reb Nassan, that really that each one is like is the Baal Shor, since it was found in his pit, right? Therefore, really, ultimately, the responsibility is with him. But whatever the owner of the guy who was damaged, whatever he can collect from the other guy, he can collect, and therefore he pays the balance. Oh my Rabba, let's look at a similar case. Let's say somebody leaves a stone right next to a pit. And an animal comes along, trips over the stone, and what do you know? It falls in the pit. So right, this is Reb Nassan Rabbanan, right? Each one is half. Or right, do we say that each one is responsible for half, or do we say that it's really on the Baal Shor to go ahead and pay the other one, right? Now, according to Rabbanan, right, the owner of the I'm just looking at the bottom of the Rabbanan Bala Eben Chayiv, the Hagaram Kol Anafila, right? He caused the entire fall. Mishum Garama Ben Ezekin, all right, Leka Lamifre. There's no way for him to get off just by calling it Grama. All right, Devanami Haidobor, because an Ev is like a board, but Hezek could be a diamond. Therefore, they cause damage. Kantana Viragama, Hamadov is fine. So therefore, the one who put the stone there really should be chayiv. And according to Reb Nassan, where was the beginning? Was that the Baal Shor? Right. So in the previous case, we had the Baal Shor was chayiv. So over here, the Baal Evan would be chayiv according to the Rabbanan, and according to Nassan, they would each pay. So Gemara says, "Pshit, that's obvious." So Gemara says, "Mount the Emoju said Hasam who Damer Baal Bor the Baal Shor, Ila Bira Didi Torah Dilcha Havi Katile." In other words, if it wasn't for me, you would have paid for the animal anyways, because your animal gored this other animal, just happened to fall into my pit. But it was really your animal really gave like a death blow to the victim. But maybe in this case, the owner of the stone could say to the guy with the pit, right? If it wasn't for your pit, my stone would have done nothing. In other words, in other words, if it would have tripped, it would just fell on the ground and gotten up. No damage would happen. So therefore, maybe the owner of the pit is doing more here than the other case. The other case, the animal by pushing it in, the push was a death blow in itself. Over here, tripping on the stone is not a death blow. So Kamash Malon, it's the same machlok as Rabbanan will say the Baal HaEvan pays, and the other ones say that Reb Nassan says they both pay. So Kamash Malon never lay Ilav Evan loy havi nafil labir. The Kamash Malon that he says, if it wasn't for your stone, it never would have fell into my pit. Itamar.
Would have walked around it.
But would have fallen. And, it wouldn't have. Yeah, it would have seen a pit and it would have walked around. Because we saw earlier that an animal which is a pikeach, not necessarily normal for it to go ahead and fall in a pit. Should have avoided it. So Itamar. So he said, top of the page, sure, the sure psuli hamukdashin shenachol. You got a tag team. You got a regular animal. We'll say Meir's animal, and Avrami owns an animal that was he made hektish, but it had a moon, and then he redeemed it, and now it's psulim mukdashin. There's certain halachas with it. We saw this yesterday, right? You can't necessarily go ahead and once it becomes a nevela, right? That you can't go ahead and just feed it to your dogs. You have to treat it with kedusha. So he said, they two of them went ahead and gored. Abai Omar Mishalim Chatzi Nezek. So Abai says in this case, so they pay. Abai Omar Mishalim Chatzi Nezek. Right, we'll just take out these parentheses. Chatzi Nezek, and that so Abai Mishalim so Abai Omar Mishalim Chatzi Nezek, and Ravina Omar Mishalim Ravia Nezek. So the owner of the animal, so the Mikdashin, is always pater. Right, as we'll soon see. So therefore, in this case, and the other guy loses that, and the other one says, which one? So some take out the whole bechor over here, right? I mean, that's the whole parentheses, right? The moichek said, where's the aleph? Right, the aleph over here. Normally, the aleph, the parentheses. Where's the little? Oh yeah. Rashal mochek said, right? Marshal takes this lashon out, right? Whether it was a bechor, because we'll soon see by psulim mukdashin, right? We'll learn up to going afterwards. We'll see why psulim mukdashin. So by Yomar Mishalim Chatzi Nezek, because the difference between mukdashin is because by the board, once it becomes gets a mum, then it no longer then the kedusha is paka, right? Right. Fine. So Abai Yomar Mishalim Chatzi Nezek, Ravina Mishalim Ravina Nezek, right? And Ravina says that you pay only a quarter nezek. So Meir, whose animal is regular, so so one says he pays half, and the other one says he pays a quarter. So what's going on here? So haba tam. So maybe we're talking about it was the first time. Both sheep is the first time, and ha rabbanan ha krab nasan, and one is the rabbanan, right? The rabbanan is that he's completely responsible for bizeh. The other one's like, and therefore he's responsible for half. And since Meir is responsible for half, he only pays chatzi nezek, therefore he pays a quarter. And the other one is like Rab Nasan. Really, he should go ahead and he did half the damage. But since he can't go ahead and pay, so therefore he covers the other part that was supposed to. In other words, he's really supposed to pay his half, and then the other guy. But since whatever he can't collect from the other guy, the other half, he collects from him. So therefore, according to Nasan, he would pay half. Or he by saying, it's according to the Rabbanan. And Habatam, in the case of according to the Rabbanan, he is a tam, and therefore he pays a quarter. And Habamuad, the other case is a muad. So therefore, in the case of muad, Speir is responsible for half, right? He doesn't pay chatzin nezek. He pays nezek shalim of the half, and therefore he pays half. Or you could dami. Some say Abai Omar chatzin nezek. Abai says chatzin nezek, and Ravina Omar kuli nezek. And Ravina says you pay the full nezek. It's not half and a quarter, rather half or full. And Bahabamuad, we're talking about a case in Havahabamuad. Both cases are on Muad, and Hak Rabban, and the one is the Rabban, each one pays their own. Therefore, Avrami's half is pater, and Meir's half is he's chayv to pay his half. Therefore, and therefore he pays chatzin nezek. And the other case is Hak Rab Nasan, who says that since we're partners in it, whatever can't be collected from Avrami is collected from Meir, and therefore, since it's a Muad, he pays nezek shalim. Or Iboy say Haba Kreb Nasan. Really, it's like Kreb Nasan. In the case of Haba Muad, in the case of Muad, Meir pays, he covers up to the full amount. Tam, where Meir goes ahead and covers only up to he would cover for his friend, but therefore, since in total it's only Chatzi Nezek, he only pays Chatzi Nezek. And Omar Rabba, around the quarter of the way down, sure the Adam should dachvu labor. Now we're going to have a bunch of different liabilities and halachas. So you have an animal owned by A. An Adam is B. Shedach will labor and push another animal into a pit owned by C. So you got Mr. A, B, and C. Le'inyan Nezikin, when it comes to damages, let's say they push the animal becomes injured, Kulan Chayav, and they're all chayav to go ahead and pay those damages together. They're each part of it. Le'inyan Arba Dvarim, but when it comes to Arba Dvarim, in other words, let's say pay for Ribui and Boshes and Tsar. What was the other one? Is Nezeg and Boshes and Pagam, right? So those that devalue. So they are Le'inyan Arba Dvarim, the Dmei Vladus, and also if it was a pregnant woman and the fetus died. Adam Chai, the person is responsible to go ahead and pay, because that is normally only an Adam person pays for Boshes, right? But if my animal causes damage, there's no Boshes, or my pet causes damage, there's no Boshes, right? The shore bor potter and the shore bor potter for these because they're always potter from the arbitvarim and also the vladus. Leinan kaifer, when it comes to go ahead and paying kaifer ushleishim shel eved. In terms of paying kofir or shloshim shel eved, right? It kills a person or the 34 an eved who dies. Shor chai, then we find an ox is the owner of the ox is chai, because that's we find the owner of an ox is chai to pay kofir. Also, the 30 shlem for an eved. However, adam ubor pturim, but a man and a bor are patur. They don't pay kofir or shloshim of eved. And the inan kalim, and let's say the animal, let's say, was carrying utensils, and there was stuff on it. Let's say it was a load, and the dishes broke. Right, that went from the animal that was it was a pond that it fell into the pit. So shor psulim mikdash. Or if it was a shor psulim mikdash, or if the animal is a psulim mikdashin, right, which cannot be fed. So adam v'shor chayavin. So the person and the shor who pushed it in, they're both chayav to go ahead and pay for the utensils, and they're both chayav to go ahead and pay for an animal that was psulim mikdashin. However, ubor, the owner of the pit, is pater. He is pater from paying for the kalim or the psulim mikdashin. My timer. So we know by kalim it says pasha. We know that's right. The drush is you pay for the animal, but you don't pay for the animal was carrying a load, and the load broke. You don't pay for the broken load. But why doesn't it pay for psulim mikdashin? So we saw this last week. My timer, maybe even yesterday. Amar Kra, the pasuk says v'hameis yelo. In other words, the owner of the pit shall go ahead and he can do whatever he wants with the dead animal. I.e., it's telling you can go ahead and feed the dead animal to your dogs. Right? This would talk about somebody who would have full use of the dead animal. So to exclude this case, that there is no full use of this dead animal, because I can't go ahead and feed this animal to the dogs, because there is some kedusha that's still upon it, and therefore the Baal Habor is pater from paying for the animal. So maybe the Pshitale the Rava. You tell me it's obvious that Rava says if you go ahead and falls in the pit, Psulim Mikdashin is pater. The Rava actually that's this exact kasha. The boy Rava, short Psulim Mikdashin should have a labor if you have an animal that was Psulim Mikdashin that fell into a pit. Mahu. So hi vam ACLO b'misha meishalo. So do we say that in other words when the carcass shall be his, whoever the carcass is fully his? We should exclude this because the carcass is not fully his. Oh Dilma, vam and I know what does that come and teach you? It's coming to teach me a separate halacha, that it's the responsibility, right, to the owners, right, to go ahead and be metapel, to go ahead and deal with the the one whose animal died. Is his responsibility to go ahead and deal with it. So Gemara says, so the bus of the boy, so he asked the question. So no, the bus of the boy, other pasha. No, he asked the question, then he answered it. And now after the answer, to him it's pasha that's coming to do psulim mikdashin. So how do we know that the owner of the animal, he's in charge of dealing with the with the nevela? So manale, so nafkale mina meisi alo. So it says over there, the pasuk says meisi alo, the short, right? So no, we have another case. That was the case of the pit. But there's another time the pasuk says those exact same words. What's that talking about? That's talking about a case by Shor Muad. It says Shor Yishalem Shor Takas Ashor. Excuse me, Shalom Yishalem Shor Takas Ashor. V'hameis Yelo. So there's a pasuk that is the identical pasuk that's said by Shor. So there's one pasuk by Bor that was on Psulim Mikdashin, and the pasuk by Shor which says that the owners amatapel with the nevela. Amesi alo the shore. That's by the shore. So my chaz is the amesi alo the shore mafki le lebalam matapel in the nevela. The amesi alo the bor mafki le lemisha meishalo. Right? Who says that the case of amesi alo is talking about the case That's the case of the ox in terms of the owners, and the case of the pit is excluding when the mason is. So maybe you switch it around. So mistabra pater gabi bor. So maybe logical to say because it's an exclusion. In other words, we're saying you're exempt. So where should the exemption be? So mistabra pater gabi bor. Maybe we should do by the pit. There's more exemptions there. Therefore, it's also teaching another exemption. Why? Because the owner of a pit, in addition to, he's also exempt, completely exempt from dishes that fall in his pit. They're being carried by an animal. He's pater, right? So Gemara says, Adarab, pater gabi shor. Maybe in case of an ox, shechein pater bo chatzi nezek. We find by an animal, if it gores, you only pay chatzi nezek. So Gemara answers, no, kuli nezek miyas lo ashkan. We don't find that a case of the owner of the animal is completely pater. So therefore, that which we're talking about exclusion must have been referring to a case of the Baal Habor. All right, we'll stop here at the 2 dots. So tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, Levi will be here. And we'll take it from here. I miss you all, gentlemen.
Take your postcard.